My favorite way of diving into the subconscious is through my dreams. And I hope that the programs we've done on dreamwork have given you inspiration and reason to pay attention to your dreams. Well, recently I became aware of someone who's taken dreamwork and has stood it on its head. And I feel I really want to share this with you. Andras Jones is a multi talented artist who for years has been doing a presentation called Radio 8 Ball. In it, he encourages a participant to ask a question to what he calls the pop oracle, which is answered by a song that's picked at random. The participant then interprets the song much like a dream, which often yields satisfying and surprising insights. Radio 8 Ball has been a podcast, radio show, live performance, and is now also available as an app. I've dabbled a bit with the app since I've been introduced to Andras, and I'm very excited to talk to him about it. So with that, welcome to the Dream Power Show, Andras.
Thank you, Debbie, and bravo. Most people get tied in knots trying to explain Radio 8 Ball, and your description was perfect. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Well, Andras, before we get into Radio 8 Ball itself, I want to spend a minute or two talking about your father, Richard M. Jones. He was a psychologist who led dream seminars at colleges and wrote a number of books, including one called The Dream Poet. How did his work inform and inspire the creation of Radio 8 Ball?
Oh, wow. Well, there's a lot there. I grew up in Olympia, Washington during the 70s when my dad was one of the founding faculties at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, and his main focus was his dream seminars, which he taught in a sort of a multi-disciplinary seminars with multiple teachers. So it was always sort of worked as a complement to other fields of academic inquiry. And our home, our dinner table, was often filled with people who were talking about dreams, talking about the foundational principles of psychology. And so all of that just sort of seeped into my brain. And then it was really synchronicity that led me to Radio 8 Ball, and through that, an understanding of how it was inspired by my father's work. In fact, I didn't even really make the connection between Radio 8 Ball and my father's dream seminars, even though I was doing Radio 8 Ball at the Evergreen State College at the time in the years just following my father's death, and was very much focused on connecting with my father's legacy and just his spirit. And I was in the middle of a Radio 8 Ball show, and a woman called up and she said, "Hey, this thing that you're doing, I'm doing some dream work, and this thing that you're doing on Radio 8 Ball reminds me of the way we do dream work." And I thought she was talking about in the present day. And she told me about how she thought it was similar. And she actually suggested a refinement in our process, where instead of interpreting it and saying, "I think this song is the answer to your question this way," she said, "Well, in the dream seminars, we used to say, if this were my dream, this is what it would mean. And maybe you could say that. If this were my answer, then this is what it means." When I was like, "Wait a second, that sounds very familiar. When were you doing this dream work?" She's like, "Oh, it was in the 70s at the Evergreen State College." I was like, "Well, you were in my father's dream seminars." She's like, "Yeah, Richard Jones." I was like, "Yeah. How is he?" "Oh, he's passed away." It was like, whatever. It was really moving. And that was the first time I realized, oh, I'm in a dream. I'm in this connection is here. And I think that's one of the great lessons, and one of the things that has been most powerful for me about musical divination, about the pop oracle, about Radio 8 Ball, is how often what's exciting about a musical divination is completely invisible to the participant at first. Whereas over time, looking back, it becomes undeniable how obvious it was. And the more you have that experience of like, I totally know what's going on, but I'm completely missing the plot over and over and over and over and over again. And eventually there's something there's a facet of wisdom that comes out of that, which is a kind of is not even, it's kind of humility, but it's also just kind of a surrender to, oh, I am constantly going to be wrong about what's really going on in almost every situation, at least on some level. And that level is, in a lot of times, the most exciting, inspirational, transformative level. So maybe have a little bit of humility about how I respond, what about the amount of confidence that I respond to anything in the moment with. That there's always some level, and usually that level is the lesson, is the humor, is the excitement. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does answer my question about that, except that my follow-up to that would be, well, how did you actually come up with this decision to do Radio 8 Ball?
It was just for fun, really. I was very focused on my musical career at the time, putting out records and touring, and there was a certain amount of, whenever you're trying to achieve something, there's a certain amount of struggle and tightness to that. And a friend of mine at the time, we were just goofing around and we thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to have a radio show where we just play CDs on shuffle function? We don't program it, we just bring in the CDs, then we just play them on shuffle function and see what happens. And I had a bunch of bootleg CDs. I was like, oh, we'll bring in bootleg CDs and play them on random. We'll call it the Pirate Shuffle. And we did that for it was late at night on the radio. Maybe it was 11 to 1 or maybe midnight to 2 on Chaos. And very early in the process, as we would play these songs at random, we would find that the random songs bore some connection, very direct connection to the thing that we've been talking about before we played it. And then we were like, well, what if we ask a question and see what happens? We did that, and then people started calling in and like, hey, what if, hey, you want to ask a question? People started calling in. And it's funny, I think my co-host and I had very different reactions to that. Mine was that I was like, this is the most interesting thing in the world, and I want to do this. I really want to explore this. And his was like, this is getting a little weird. I just wanted to talk with you. I didn't want to. So he quit, and I
He was
changed the
just too
name.
practical and not into seeking the divine.
I mean, I don't want to. It just for his reasons, he quit. But I was hooked, and I was completely hooked. And I changed the name to Radio 8 Ball. It was in part a reference. There was a band I knew from Los Angeles called Radio I Ching. And if that name hadn't existed, I probably would have chosen that name. It would be called Radio I Ching, but it's called Radio 8 Ball because that felt like, and I also like that because I've grown into it because it has this sort of kitschy, childish game aspect, which is one of the things that I've really tried to do with Radio 8 Ball is to keep it in the realm of entertainment, as opposed to like, well, for me, I'm very aware that it lives in the realm of the sacred and in the transformative and in the healing. But, and this is no judgment of anyone else, but for me to put it out that way would have felt very pretentious. And because of the way it came to me was so playful, I always wanted to keep it in a playful package. I think that's probably just maybe a guard against my own pretension and my own inclination towards being very serious about things. And the thing that I got so much joy out of from Radio 8 Ball was you can't prepare for it. You can't hold it too tightly. In fact, if you do, it just sort of, you are guaranteed to miss the point. So yeah, so that's how I came up with it. Just goofing around, really goofing around, like almost like a horror movie. Like some kids, you're like, hey, let's play with this Ouija board, see what happens. 20 years later, I'm the man behind Radio 8 Ball.
But it's funny because there are lots of things that sort of happen like that, where you think it's kind of playful, but there really is a lot of deep meaning to it. And when you talk about musical divination, to me, in playing with the app, because it is kind of a playful thing to do. I see it more like tarot in a sense where, your or oracle cards where you're given a specific thing and then it's your job as the listener to dive into it and see what you find out.
Yeah, I often describe it as it's like picking musical tarot cards. The difference being that a tarot is a finite archetypal architecture, and music is infinite. There's so much of it, and if you randomize it, there's I think one of the things, the big hurdles to music, is to experiencing music the way maybe we do when we're young, is as we get older, we kind of narrow our focus and know what we like and know what we don't like. And so when you get a randomly chosen song as the answer to your question, even if it's a song you don't like, you have to focus on it and really listen to it. And my experience is music, generically, all music, is so magical and so good that if you really focus on it, even a quote bad song that you quote don't like, it's going to reveal itself to you. It's going to be an intimate moment, and you are going to have a connection with that song for the rest of your life that's different than you would have had if you hadn't really listened for those 3.5 minutes selfishly. Not, do I like this or don't I like this? Is this good or is it bad? It's like, what? No, no, no. What are you telling me? I need to know. What is this relationship going to work? Am I going to get this job? Should I move? Are we going to survive? If you're really listening selfishly to a piece of music that way, it transforms it. And again, there's a lesson in that, because I think if you realize that about songs, then you must start to think about that about people, and you start to think about that about moments in your life. And
Yeah,
it has the power to open up the world in a beautiful
yeah,
way.
and one of the things about doing it is that it actually forces you to listen to the lyrics, and let's be honest, how many times you're listening to music and we're not really paying attention. We
Mm-hmm.
like the beat, we like the way it sounds, but the words sound good, but to really, really, really dive into them, it's a whole other story. Uh, so for all of those people who, don't live near you, can't hear the radio show, or don't have access to the podcast or any of your live performances, you've actually gone and created an app that people could download and try this out for themselves. So explain a bit about how the app works.
Yes, the Radio 8 Ball app is available. Unfortunately, it's only available for iTunes users or iPhone users. I'm an Android user, but app technology is very expensive, and it turns out that you have to build two separate apps for the two separate formats as opposed to one that can work on both. So I apologize to my fellow Android users for that failure on my part. But for the rest of you, the app works pretty much the way the show works. You are invited to ask a question to the Pop Oracle, and that question is answered by a randomly chosen song. And that song comes from a database of over 2,500 songs that were recorded in the history of Radio 8 Ball. So all of the people, the live musicians, I should say, Radio 8 Ball quickly evolved from being one where we just played CDs on shuffle function to ones where we invited actual songwriters to come in with the list of songs. We'd have people ask a question and pick a number, and then the artist would play the song off their list that corresponded with that number. And we recorded all those songs over like 16, 18 years of doing the show. And all of those songs are in the database. And what I find particularly exciting is that each of those songs is time-stamped. It's a moment. It was recorded at a specific moment, a specific date, a specific time, and to another question. So each song has its own other context that exists outside of the question you ask that can be useful in interpreting your question. Like if you're asking a question on March 16th and the answer you get was recorded on March 16th in another year, that's another synchronicity for you to explore. Anyway, you're invited to ask the app a question. You can type it in or ask it a question, and then our along with the kitschy nature of the Radio 8 Ball show's name, with the app you can press, enter, or you can shake it like an 8 ball, and the song will randomly play. And then you can basically you can listen to the song, you can share it with your friends through social media or email, not the actual song, but your question and the answer you got. And I encourage people to go out and find the artists who recorded those songs and purchase those actual songs from the artist.
Well, Andras, I wanted to talk to you about actually using the app and what happened to me when I got in there and asked the Pop Oracle question. So you ready to hear about it?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, so I decided I was just going to go for a very broad, simple question. So I asked, where do I go from here? And the song that came up was a song called Needles. I don't know the guy who sang the song. I
That's
tried to,
actually that's Dino Stamatopoulos, who is a very very well known and in the industry a very famous comedy writer. He wrote for Mr. Show and for Conan O'Brien, and he was on the TV show Community playing the role Starburns. He's one of my oldest friends in Hollywood, and he also is an aspiring songwriter and was one of the first guests on the Radio 8 Ball podcast for Starburns Industries that we did for 2 or 3 years. That's Dan
okay,
Harmon's
let,
company.
let
So
me tell you,
that's Dino.
yes, let me tell you about what I got out of the song. So the song basically talks about he talks about being a bad father and being in needles and having communications problems and not wanting to talk to his daughter and things like that. Well, I didn't resonate with the not wanting to talk because I have a daughter and we have a good relationship, at least I think we do. And we talk, but it just got me thinking about communication in general. That and also that he had references about being in California. I lived in California for 37 years, and it's only, well, where do I go from here? Does it mean that I should go back to California? And I think, well, I don't know, maybe not, but my kids live there, so maybe it's a signal that it's time to go out and pay them a visit and maybe work on my communication skills so we can have a good, nice talk between all of us. And that was sort of the flash impression of what I got from the song. But as I was playing around with the app, I said, well, there's a little thing on it that says, click for more or next, or I forget what the actual says, but it said click on the song of the day. So I said, I'm going to go ahead and click on the song of the day and see what I get. Well, I got this song. It's a very uplifting, bouncy song. And what resonated with me in hearing the song was the line, there's never been a better time than right now. And the song
And
was,
that song was what?
it was called Quality Problems.
Quality Problems by the band All Day Sucker, a great band from Los Angeles.
Yeah. And what I got out of that was that, I shouldn't be thinking about any of those petty problems that get into my head and really kind of dominate the day sometimes. And just what I need to do is just take a deep breath and relax and just enjoy life. And I had a lot of fun just playing around with that. So what do you think?
Well, first of all, I think I love your instinct to pair your answer to your specific question with the song of the day. Every day, the Radio 8 Ball app generates um, a randomly chosen song of the day from the database. So as the creator of it, I always hope that this is how people will use it, that they'll ask it and get an answer to their question, which is sort of determined by the user, but then check it against this other randomly chosen thing that is more universal for all users. So first of all, I applaud your instinct there. It definitely makes me very happy. Um, there are a couple things. I'm just curious if these have any meaning for you. First of all, that the Dino Stamatopoulos recording came from August 8th, 2017, and that was on the show that appeared on. That was the answer to a question from another songwriter named Chris Sandman Sand, and there's a lot of synchronicity in that. It's funny, like when your question was, what's next for me? Is that was
And
the
where do I
question?
go from here? Which is
Where do I go from here? And then the first song is about a guy who's stuck someplace
yes,
and is trying to figure out, he's stuck in this place that the name, even needles, a piercing, penetrating, maybe painful, maybe scary, maybe healing place, all of these things, right? Needles have taken on a whole other meaning since August 8th of 2017. That couldn't have been in our consciousness when he was singing that song. Whereas we spent the last 2 or 3 years with people having very intense conversations about needles. And then, so that's the resonance for me. And then All Day Sucker, the song Quality Problems, that was recorded on September 13th, 2017, as the answer to a question from an actress named Krista Allen, who some people, I'm not quite sure what we would know her from, but she's a pretty successful actress in film and TV. And well, I love that was the universal answer. That was the song of the day, Quality Problems, which, I mean, isn't that what most of us have most of the time? Oh, I'm so
exactly.
annoyed that my shower isn't heating up fast enough. Whoa, like, or, you know, I'm in this very comfortable place, this wonderful place, but I am miserable and I'm sad because of things that are happening in my life, because of things that happened to me in the past. Even though I'm comfortable now, I'm still struggling with things that happened to me or I think happened to me when I was 5 years old. That's a quality problem, that you have the comfort and the benefit of a comfortable place where you can be miserable and
Well, that's it.
worry about things.
Once we move out of survival, then yes, they are all quality problems. And
Yeah.
that's why listening to that song, because it was so bouncy and lively and everything, it just put me in a really great headspace. And it's a wonderful thing, changing, being able to change that state of mind and go from, not that I was upset or confused or in any way, really negative, but going from maybe, the neutral state to like really feeling happy as a result of that was a really great feeling.
Well, and also, I mean, there's some great synchronicities here. First of all, those most of the music that was recorded for Radio 8 Ball was recorded in Olympia, Washington. But you got two very LA, very Hollywood answers. And when I think about Dino and Dino Stamatopoulos and the lead songwriter and singer of the band All Day Sucker, who's a guy named Morty Coyle, a name that is steeped in Shakespearean humor. Uh, it's just funny because Dino is and I'm not letting anything out of the bag, he is a famously, he celebrates his alcoholic indulgence on a regular basis. It's one of his favorite topics. Morty has been sober since we were in our early 20s, and is equally celebrates that about his life. And so you got an answer from one of the most long-term debauched people I've known, and one of the most long-term devoted to his sobriety, to his substance health, I guess. And there's something about that, about where am I going, where I'm on a healing journey, whatever it is. Maybe for you, it's, you drink too much ice water and you need to drink some more room temperature water. I'm just assuming that you have no vices other than that. But even that could be a vice. I need to give up my addiction to ice water and sometimes drink room temperature water. And that is the journey from Dino Stamatopoulos and needles to Morty Coyle and All Day Sucker and quality problems.
Right.
So there's something that's really beautiful there.
There is, and it just I had another situation I wanted to talk about. I don't know if we have enough time, so I'm going to make it really quick, and maybe we could just
Okay.
do like a really lightning round for it. So that was a very broad question. So I thought I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to ask a very specific question. And so I asked it, what can I do to increase my finances? Well, the song that came up was a song that was called For Dennis Bland by a group called The Previous. And the thing about that song is it's an instrumental. There are no words. There's nothing to listen to in terms of the words and try to figure out the meaning of the words. So my conclusion I drew out of that was, this is not the right time to think about that. Come back another day, give it some thought at another time. What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, The Previous was my band. So you've got the perfect person to talk to. For Dennis Bland is one of the opening tracks to an album I put out called Unpop, all about my sort of high school bullying experience. And For Dennis Bland is a play on the middle name of Pete Townsend, whose name is Dennis Blandford. And Pete Townsend and his music were very important in sort of getting me through that time. So I think you wanted lightning round, how you can help. You've already done it. You are helping your financial situation by having me, the songwriter who created that song, here on your show to talk about this synchronicity and the Radio 8 Ball app. And if I was able to give a longer, more thoughtful answer, there would be more humility to it. But sometimes if you want to make things fast, you just got to be arrogant and say, yeah, I'm the answer.
Yeah. Well, you actually giving me the background of the song also gives me some more fodder to think about, so I can go back and meditate on all of that and see what erupts.
And I would recommend, and I would say this about all of this, but since we're here on this, I would recommend checking out that full album. It's a short album. It's available. I'll share it with you if you want to share a link with your listeners and your viewers. They can check it out. And there is something of, I'll just, to get deeper just very quickly, the record is about bullying. We live in a capitalist system, which is a bullying system. How do we survive in it? How do we move past it? How do we heal within that system? These are the issues from a childish or adolescent place that record's dealing with. So.
Okay, well, definitely check it out. One final question is, how can people find out more about you and Radio 8 Ball?
Well, there's a website called radio8ball.com. That's the catch-all for everything there. I would recommend subscribing to the Radio 8 Ball podcast. We aren't putting out podcasts very regularly right now, but there are like almost 700 podcasts up there with plenty of celebrity guests and musicians that you probably know. Check it out. I highly recommend it. Download the Radio 8 Ball app from the iTunes App Store. And if you are going to be in Ashland in June, I'm going to be presenting Radio 8 Ball as a keynote address at the International Association of the Study of Dreams, IASD, at their annual conference. The musical guest is going to be Bart Davenport, who you can find on the Radio 8 Ball website. You can find his appearances on the show. He's a fantastic singer-songwriter, and this is going to be an amazing event. I'm so honored to be invited there and to be in Ashland in June during the Shakespeare Festival, presenting Radio 8 Ball, which was inspired by my father's dream seminars. There's just so much synchronicity in there. It's going to be off the charts. So.
I was going to say the synchronicities are abounding. Well,
and finally, let me just say, if you want to find out about me, my films, my music, everything, I have a website called andrasjones.com. You can also find it at previouslyyours.com. My band was called The Previous. That's why it's called that. And now I'm done.
We've been speaking with the creator and host of Radio 8 Ball, Andras Jones. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. If so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector Weisman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.